audience engaged for full immersion.
The world's most immersive movie experience begins now.
Hello, thanks for having me back. It's good to be here.
So, part 3 now for Esoteric Disclosure. What I wanted to try and do with you today, if we can, is really just pick up straight from where we left off from the last interview that we've now released. So we've kind of gone through your story. We've done Seattle, Peru. Then we went to the moon, and then we went to Mars, and now we're at Ceres, right?
Yes. It's been a long time since we talked, so it's hard to remember exactly where we were.
So if I remember rightly, just to kick straight back into it, what we were talking about was the fact that I was trying to get clarification from you about these submarines that we discussed. There was the link with Tonkin, and the fact that Tonkin had came out and said that back in the 30s, 40s, he was, he'd started using things like submarines as well as what we know of the Germans. And I think from where we were, Tony, you were just explaining to me what the inside of these submarines looked like and whether or not they were submarines or not. And I think that's kind of where we start, right? Is from your memory, because these were like your really early missions, am I right?
Yes, yeah. And I spent quite a bit of time on there. You got to think, at the time, it was kind of a miserable existence for me. I never saw the thing from the outside. I got off a train and walked through a hallway through an umbilical and got on it. So I saw it from the inside. Since we talked, I went on YouTube and I found a tour of an old German submarine.
Oh, wow.
Like somebody went through and toured it. There's one that's at a museum somewhere. And a lot of it looked familiar, but not really. So it was completely different on the inside than what an old German. I mean, it was like the same construction techniques, that I remembered. We had the door that you had to step over, and with the threshold maybe 10 inches tall that you had to step over. The doors that closed, they had the wheel that would lock them. And no matter what, whenever we got in a hurry, hurry up and go back and get, you need something. And you'd run back and get it. And I remember waking up in the morning telling myself I wasn't going to hit my shin on one of those thresholds. I said, today I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And sure enough, you end up tripping every day on it. And that was one of the things that it was so frustrating to work in that, where every room you had a really high threshold. But there were some rooms that were big. There were some areas that were pretty big.
Big as in long or big as in wide?
Both. There was our main work area was a pretty big, good sized room. I want to say upwards of 1,000 square feet of a room and it had walls. It was sectioned off, but it was kind of a big area. And then other areas we worked were really cramped. But I didn't. It was like the lower decks of it where we didn't go upstairs ever, and you knew that there were. They would call down. There was a speaker system, and they could see us. We couldn't see them, and they would call down and talk to us and let us know they were watching us do this and that. But there were people upstairs, basically, on the ship that we were aware were there, and they were in charge of us. But we had basically the lower decks to ourselves, and it looked like the exact same construction of the German submarine that I looked on YouTube, the tour, but it was different. It's hard to explain. I mean, I could sit and probably sketch it out, but it was a different layout altogether than what that submarine was, the one that I saw online.
Yeah, and I think that the main point in this topic is the fact that we're talking of, obviously anybody can change the interior of anything, right? So it's about that we've sort of clicked into this whole, it potentially was a submarine, and it feels like potentially it was sort of that type of ship that they've used, and that just the links back to the Tonkins and everything else. So let's get a little bit more into so you're on Ceres, and you've now sort of gone through this training with the Greys. You went through the multiple selection, and they sort of said, okay, this is going to be your job now. You've been aligned to do. You didn't go into the manual labour stuff. You sort of got this job now on these ships. And how did that sort of daily life work out for you? What was you doing on a day-to-day basis? Because you said you lived in like a prison type place. without bars on the windows. And before you started going out for further, longer missions where you stayed on the ship, I'm assuming at the beginning you was just on and off the ship every day, or how did that work?
It was always like that. We never stayed out late. There were later on the other ship. There were a few missions where there was a time mistake, a mistake in time travel, and we got stuck out on the ship. Once I remember, it was like a regular, like a 10-hour day, and we got stuck out another 16 hours. So it was a 26 hours or so mission that we were on, and that was, I remember having sore feet. That was the biggest thing, is the shoes they gave me were like the Converse tennis shoes with a flat sole, so my feet would always get sore standing on the grating, so I remember that. But no, for the most part, we left in the morning and we got back. Sometimes we didn't do a time paradox, a time thing. We had our 8-hour day and we got home in the afternoon, but we never stayed long. The ships always go and come back. It's a health issue. Okay. You have to come back. People. That's why I'm a little leery of others that have come forward and said they lived on deep space in ships and never went to a planet for years, and they put people out airlocks and things, because it's just, I don't want to say it's false, but it's not what I remember. I remember that we had to go back to a planet every day. That there's a health issue about it. It takes a toll. I don't know exactly why. What was behind it, but there's a health issue where we had to go and come back every day, and it was ran like a 9 to 5 thing.
Okay, and so it specifically, because I just want to try and understand now timelines and missions and how all of this sort of panned out when you was on Ceres, because Ceres is the place you spent the most time, right? You did
Ceres, yeah.
Sorry, Ceres. So you did the bugs on Mars, and you were there for a reasonably short period of time. That was all the bugs section of everything that you've discussed with me. So when we get to Ceres and we're on this dwarf planet now, sort of, I guess what I'd like to do is go through a sort of timeline of what missions you did, where you went, and I guess this is going to take a bit of time, right? It's about 8 years, the whole time period that you were there. Is that right?
Well, what's great is that the first 4 years or so were just Groundhog Day. It was the same exact day every day. There was nothing really, it was like a grind. It was a prison type construction. The area that I slept in, I had like a 5 by 8. It was probably a little bigger than that. You want to call it a cell, but it wasn't. It was basically 3 walls, and the other wall where there would be bars, there was no bars. There was just, at the foot of my bed, I could look out and see the hallway and other people across the hall. And it was long rows of that, and there were levels. And that was the area that was my room. I had a room, and it was a little cot. It was not a cot, but a little bed. And there was like a one drawer with a little table bolted to the wall that couldn't move. And I never put anything in the drawer. I didn't own anything. When in the morning, a buzzer would go off, and to make this put it in perspective, I was free to come and go. All I had to do was show up for work, and I was free to go. I could walk into town, but it was something like 7 kilometers away. The walk through a tunnel to get to the nearest town was how far away the area were. So there was a train that took us. So there were guys that did walk into town and walk back. But once you got there was no money or anything. They just wanted to go and see it.
So what? But did you ever do this? Did you ever go and explore?
I never walked it. No, I never walked it. I was always, like I said, I was always sore, and in the first place. And I just didn't think that. And I thought, what am I going to do when I get there with no money and a slave collar on? So I never did. I heard other guys go and talk about it, and they liked it, but they would go and come back, and it was kind of like it was a cliff note. Other guys told me about what they did, and I thought, you walked all day and after you work, and then had to get up for work the next day. I just thought it was a stupid thing to do.
I did that. Yeah. So you had no option of taking the trains there or anything.
If your train, if you used it personally, it cost money. It was like $1. It wasn't much, but we had 0, so it wasn't an option. No. So the typical day was. So the reason I'm saying that is because guys came back at all different times at night sometimes, and what they would do was when you checked in, there was a security. You had to check in, and then you had to go through and shower and get dressed for bed, and they would turn on your light in your room and give you 5 minutes to get to your room and get ready for bed, and the light was shut off automatically. I didn't have any kind of light switch either. But in the morning, a buzzer would go off, which I can hear it in my head right now. It was like a loud buzzer, and all the lights would come on. And we had to get up, and you had to go in. Basically, it was a big shower room with a big locker room on one side and a locker room on the other side. And they weren't lockers; they were just hooks. And you would go in and take off your whatever you were sleeping in, your nightwear, and hang it on the hook that had my number on it. Yeah, everybody had the hook had a number, and then walk naked. We all the guys. There was a line, and you had it was like 20 seconds or something in the shower. You go up to the shower and you had 20 seconds. You had to move, and you'd go and shower, and then you'd walk out the other side, and the hook on the other locker room would have your clothes ready that you were going to wear for the day. And so I went to my hook with my number on it, and my suit would be hanging there. And mine was different. And this was one of the issues that kind of sucked, was that my clothes were different than everybody else's. The other guys were working in mines, so I stood out. And so I didn't. It was, as a result, people in general tend to bond by picking on the outsider.
Sure.
You know why people get bullied? Because the two people that do the bullying bond on it. And they did that I was the outsider because I was a ship duty, and they were mine people. So it was kind of cool to hate me, people from the people that went to the hangar, because they got dirty and filthy and I didn't.
Yeah.
So I would put on as a result, I never had any friends. I didn't have one friend for that. The other two guys I worked with on the ship, this is a stretch. This is, I don't know how, but they were lovers. The two other guys, there were three of us that worked in my section, and sometimes there was a fourth, but he came and went. The other two guys became lovers, and they didn't like me either. So I was, through those years, you're talking 6 years, I didn't have any kind of friendship or any kind of personal relationships whatsoever. It was miserable. It was a miserable existence. On top of the job being kind of hardworking, even days that were crews, I really had nobody to speak to. So,
go on, sorry. Go on.
So once you got out of the shower, you went through a checkpoint. There was a desk there. Like, there were two officers behind a window, and you would have, if you needed something, you would have to go check with them. But there were security officers there, and they would take a count, and you got on your train. And so there were different trains that came. One went to the hangar, and one went to the mines. And you would get on your train and go. And when I got off the train, I was directly it was a dirty room, like a big cement area. And there was security there that went to other areas of the hangar, and which I wasn't allowed to go through. And I would right into an umbilical, like when you get on an airplane, the long hallway that's an umbilical that connects to the airplane from an airport.
I know.
It was that, and I went right inside the ship, and that was my day. It was Groundhog Day. When I got back, depending on when it was, I would come out there, get on the train, go shower, and go back in. And there was a cafeteria there as well.
So I remember when we spoke before, we had this conversation that said, because when you said that you were on the ships later on other missions as well as these ships, we never really got a clarification of whether those ships were moving or not, right? Because you don't really get to feel the movement, do you? That's what you were saying.
No.
And that was my wonder is there, and it's only really a question, and it's not really in any way a negative, is in that period of time, was there anything specific when you went into that base, when you arrived there on the train, was there anything specific that they actually said, other than that you've got to go and fix this, clean that, fix this, do that? Was there anything else that you got to find out about what you were doing, where you were going, or anything like that in that period of time when it was Groundhog Day?
No, but we could tell, like, somebody asked me this before, I don't know if it was you, somebody else was like, well, how do you know that you even went anywhere?
That's what I said.
Because you could hear the ship running. You could hear machines turn on in the ship. You could hear systems turn on at certain times. And there were times when they would call down and say that the drop what we were doing, they needed something else done, because actively systems malfunctioned while we were out there. So there were days, and to be clear, there were most of the days we were like that. But there were days when the ship went nowhere, and we still worked on it and cleaned it. The ship sat there, and it was like they would say that, today you're cleaning. There's nothing going on. It was kind of like, on the bulletin, on the list of things to do.
Okay, fine. So I guess we don't really need to cover that section a lot more then, right? I mean, from what you're telling me.
Okay. So
what are the other things you want to tell me about that time?
Great. So I've never had the opportunity really for anybody that talked through this section.
Sure. Let's do it then.
And I want to build on to, what happened was after, I want to say 4 years, there was a time when an officer came in to the room on the ship in the morning, right before we were going to take off. And, when we were getting our assignment of things to do, and he came in, he said, do you guys qualify as expendable? And there are missions that are dangerous. And if you volunteer to participate on any of those missions, you stand the chance of being promoted or dying. These are you are expendable. We need expendable crew, and that's you. He said you have to volunteer. You must volunteer. We're not going to tell you at this time to do it. We're asking for volunteers.
Free will,
and if you volunteer,
Free will.
Yeah, and if you volunteer, there's a chance you could die. But if you live, you will be rewarded. There'll be some sort of reward. And they kind of made it sound tantalizing, but there really wasn't much. And at the time, I was so lonely. I can't state it enough that at the time it was so miserable to just not have any friends. I mean, literally, not other people. I lived with thousands of other men, and I was an outcast. Do you get what I mean?
Oh,
and
I do.
So I didn't have any kind of physical relation, not physical, but any kind of relationship with anybody. I wanted a friend, but I just didn't have
interpersonal relationship, just where you can sit down, have a chat, just open up your mind, open up your feelings, your thoughts. And
how was your day?
Yeah, just bounce. Yeah.
And so there were people that I talked to, but it was kind of empty. I was an outsider, and then on top of it, the everything that I had been through, the mind control stuff, I was a damaged person, so it wasn't like I was somebody that was good to hang out with. I was damaged in that way. So, long story short, I volunteered. I said, yes, please, because at that point, I really wanted to die. I had been programmed to not kill myself. Through the mind control stuff, I've been programmed to not kill myself. Because I entertained the thought in that time, and there was no, it just wasn't an option. I just didn't have it in me. So I wanted to, I thought if the mission goes great and I die, then I'm out of here. Then thank God. It's anything's better than this. Number one. Number two, if I get through it, then I get promoted and I might get out of here. So for me, it was in a macabre way, it was a win-win. In a very macabre way, it was a win-win. I was not actively suicidal, but I was kind of tired of that life. I was miserable. I was suffering in that life. So I volunteered, and I've never talked about any of this before because I didn't believe it. And these are memories that I've always had them strongly, and more importantly, I spoke about them to other people up there when I finally did get friends later. That's why it was such a big deal for me to go to that brothel and make friends. It was a big deal. But I remember telling people about this there, but I just didn't. When I remembered it and I started doing interviews, I didn't believe it. And then when I went to Gaia and I met Jay Weidner, if I'm saying it right, he was explaining to me about how the reptiles prefer to eat people right after they have adrenaline. They want when they go to eat somebody, which they do eat people. There are reptile races that enjoy eating people. They don't want you put 10 people in front of them, and the calm one, they don't want to eat him. They want to eat the one that's scared because of the adrenaline. Because
this is why they like doing it, and this is really horrible, but this is why they like doing it with younger children, because they can make them
really scare them.
Really scare them. Yeah. Okay.
So anyhow, this whole story all of a sudden made perfect sense why they did that to us, because it didn't make any sense. Because I'm going to describe a mission to you that honestly doesn't make any fucking sense on how it happened. Excuse my language. But when I remembered it, I thought that doesn't make it. There's no way I'm going to tell this story to anybody because it doesn't make any damn sense whatsoever. But after you add into the adrenaline thing, why they want to stoke an adrenaline up, then it makes perfect sense. So what happened was one day we flew to the moon, to the moon base, and it was a lower level of it. It was a different level than the main one, and two officers came and as they came and got me and said, "You've been chosen for a mission today. Come with us." And it was two guys that I never met before. They were German soldiers, officers, and they had their stuff on, and they were dressed even more formally than normal. And they took me off the ship. I went off, and we got to a series of hallways, and there was an elevator, and we were inside another base, and it was on the moon. And I don't remember the name of it, but they said it was like an honor to be there because it's a high, what do you call it, restricted area.
This is what you talked to me about last time, and you said that later on you did some missions that were in the restricted areas where you
I mentioned
high clearance. Yeah.
Yeah. I mentioned it, and nobody ever really. I've never really had. There's.
You're not tapped into it.
Well, people that see my story that interview me always want to cover the same stuff that I spoke of. So this is technically the first time I'm speaking of this. So we walked a ways, and we walked around, and they were in my ear. They said, "Look, you are representing." I want to say the Nachtwaffen. They I have a hard time with names, but they were saying you're here representing us, and they were talking in the German name of the organization.
Roughly, you think it's Nachtwaffe?
Nachtwaffen.
Nachtwaffen, okay.
But I'm not 100% sure. Honestly, I don't have a solid memory of it.
We can research some German language and we can see what that is.
The thing is, it's become an issue now. The actual name of stuff out there has become a benchmark to test people if they're real or not. So I don't remember the street names. I don't remember street names of places I lived in my regular life now. So, I don't think that's...
The more you release this, the more you'll be able to familiarize yourself with it and the more that things will come back to you. And sometimes it takes time, Tony. So go on.
But anyhow, so they were really in my ear and say, look, even though you're a slave, you're one of us, and you don't take anything from anybody here. Nobody gives us anything. Like they were really proud of themselves. And they said, on this base, we're above all them. Like they were really telling me, like, while you're in this base, nobody tells you what to do. We're the only ones that tell you what to do. You're with us, and we're above them. And like they were doing that. And right when I walked around a corner, there was a young 9 or 10-year-old. There were two grays escorting a young African boy, a black boy, to a door. And he was out the end of the hallway. And he looked at me, and he ran at me screaming with his arms up. And he ran straight at me. And they had just told me that, don't
take no shit.
Yeah, exactly. Don't take any shit from nobody. Like 50 feet before I walked around the corner, this kid comes running up to me full speed, and I kicked him in his chest. He came at me, and I just put my foot up, and I kicked him, and he went knocked down, and he was it hurt, and he laid there, and the Greys came up and got him, and they did something to him, and he got up and kind of conformed with them and went back, and I said, see, and I kind of, for my state of mind at that moment, I felt like, like I'd done something tough, but really I kicked the kid down. You know what I mean? How terrible it was.
That's your adrenaline. That's your adrenaline, Tony.
No. We're not even there yet. I'm making note of this because that kid has grown up and contacted me and remembers it.
Really?
So I know him in real life. So
wow.
And he remembered that incident, and so did I. So that's crazy but that's somebody. He's real, and I think he lives in New York somewhere, in New Jersey. But he contacted me long ago when my first interviews came out, and he told me that was a dick move, and he was really hated me after that for years. And he went through a lot of torture through that program, what he was doing.
Have you connected though? I mean, you know his name. You connected properly?
Yeah, I won't say it right now. I'll tell you later.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put his name out without his permission, kind of thing. But he contacted me, and this is something that's happened in my real life. Is that memory he had too. So I mean that's
a big thing, Tony. That's a big thing.
Yeah, fucking A.
Yeah, it really is.
So from there, I went down, and we went down into the hallway, and we waited. We took an elevator and went down somewhere else, and we finally got to a room that had they were grids. It was grids. It was two plates on top of them, like a special floor, and then above it, the same thing as the floor above it. And there were guys guys there that were like whatever working the machine. They had machinery in an office, and there were 3 other guys there like me. They were slaves. There were the more expendable guys. So there were 4 of us total. And
are they from the Germans as well? The other 3.
They were, yeah. Well, they were from other programs, but they were expendable guys like me. They were in the same boat as me, but they did not come from Ceres. I don't believe they came from elsewhere.
Okay.
Anyhow, they said that when I got there, the 2 officers handed me off to them, and they waited outside. They waited in the room and wanted to watch. And an officer came up and said they handed us equipment. They handed us there were 2 big harnesses that crossed across. Like you put on a harness, and it had a big like a metallic harness that went in an X around me. And then we had gloves that were like a suction cup that had an electric button on them, and you could touch the button, and the light would come on, and it would grab to whatever you put it on. So you could climb with them. And there were ones for your feet, and the button worked for the one on your foot too. So all you had to do was press the button, and it would grab and let off of it and let go, and you could climb. And that it would be this hand and that foot at the same time. And then the harnesses, they said, reduced. It was something like 30% or 40. It was an anti-grav belt, but it only reduced your weight by something like 30%. So if you weighed 100 pounds, you would weigh 70 pounds when you turned it on. So they gave us that harness, and they gave us a backpack, and there were chrome canisters inside the backpack. They looked like, like paintball air canisters, but they were bigger, and they were chrome. And they had a little hose on the top and an apparatus. And he said, this guy's been trained. 2 of you have been trained to do this, and if something happens, you can contact us. But these guys will take care of it. You guys are just carrying these up, and you're going to go. And when you're done, you guys are going to refill some fluid. The unit's already been repaired. You're going to refill the fluid in the unit. You're going to come in, and there'll be water waiting there for you. You drink your water, then you're going to go out, and you're going to scale a vertical surface up to the top to the next one. It'll be immediately on. They showed us a little graphic too. There was a computer graphic, and it showed what we were going to do. Like you're going to come in to this room, go out, drink this water, go out the door, and then scale this vertical surface to the left. And it was exactly how it was, but it was like a computer. It was a CGI. And when you get to the top there's a unit there. It looks like this, and then you're going to plug in here. And these guys have already been trained on it while we were waiting. Like I was the last one to show up, so they got the training on it. So we said, okay. He said, you got everything? I said, yes. And they suited us all up. Another person helped me put on all the. It was a big, heavy harness. It was a heavy thing, and it was uncomfortable. But when it turned on, it got light. You got lighter.
Because the anti-grav belt that you had made it so that you all of a sudden become lighter, right?
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, it was a big thing. It was a big. When it wasn't on, it was kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So they lined us up, and 2 by 2. Let me hold on. Let me think here. I've never talked about this before. Yeah, we were 2 by 2, I think. And they said when it turns on, you're going to want to walk into it at a different speed. Walk 1 speed into it. Just walk 1 continual speed. And what it was is they turned on. They got out of the room and they turned on where those 2 plates were, and a light came on and a ball lit up like a glow. It was a glow. I want to say it was like a greenish glow. Anyhow, it was a ball. And the one guy walked into it in front of me, and it was my turn, and I walked right into it just like they told me. And when I got close to it, when you got very close to the surface of it, I could see the door handle of the room where I ended up.
Okay.
Do you understand? Like I was walking, it was a ball, and when I walked into it, as soon as I got close to it, I could see. And then I went through it, and I was standing in the room that I could see, and it was a stairwell of a building. It was like a high-rise. But you know where the stairwell goes up and the doors that you can go up? It was there. I was at the top of it. I was inside a stairwell. And I felt kind of, you felt kind of weird. You have to drink water.
Can I ask you, did you feel the same as you did when you went through the portal when you traveled from Mars to Ceres?
Yeah, but it was on a different, right. It was the same kind of effect, but it was a different, like on a different power, like a different scale. Like the one Ceres was a poof, like a poof, There was a poof to it. This one had more of a gradual you know, and you really didn't feel it, but you went into it, and when you got out of it, I kind of felt dizzy. Like, have you ever passed out? Ever stood up too fast? You know, you stand up too fast, and it was like that when I got there. When I stood in the room, it was like I stood up too fast.
Yeah.
I was like disoriented. And we had to drink. They said, "Here, drink this. You have to drink water immediately after you have bad electrolytes or something, or whatever the reason was." There were bottles of water waiting for us on the floor right there, and we each slammed our water, and then we turned on our stuff. We walked out exactly like it. It was downtown Chicago. We were in Chicago. We were on top of a building. Like we went out onto the roof where a parapet was, and then the building there was a roof to one edge of the building, and then there was the building, and we scaled up it, and we climbed up, 20 floors or so, and it was late at night. There was supposed to be nobody in the building that could see us. It was after hours. It was late at night. It was hot, and like the air was hot. It was a summer day. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we scaled up it, and I remember climbing it, and it was scary. Like I couldn't believe what I was in the middle of doing. Like just yesterday, I was in my Groundhog Day. I was in the same exact stuff. It's Groundhog Day, and all of a sudden, I'm in Chicago looking down. I mean, you could see the cars and everything. We were way up above the streets. We got to the top and went in, and then we did exactly what we were told. We walked up. It was disguised as an air conditioning unit, but it was a anti-grav unit for a reptile that was living in there in an apartment underneath of it. And he came out. After we were done, we were told that when we finished, we were to line up and stand at attention until it came out and dismissed us. And then we would portal out. A portal will get us. And I couldn't understand. This is the thing that didn't make sense. I thought, why have us climb when they could have just portaled us right there? It didn't make sense to me. They never told us why. They made us climb up the side of the wall and then do the mission. They could have portaled us right there. And then they said something like they don't want you to be seen or something. But that didn't make sense because they portaled us out from there when we left. We portaled right out from that very spot. I thought, why didn't we portal into that spot in the first place until the adrenaline thing came into play? Do you know what I mean? Like now that I think about that, they wanted us to be excited, to be scared. So for me to say it was anything, I don't know. I don't know for sure. They wouldn't tell us anything. We were expendable, and there was a good chance one of us was gonna get killed. They said that they don't be surprised. Like they even prepared us for that. If one of us gets killed or two of us gets killed, the other two are to stand there at attention and do nothing. They gave us orders about that. So that was something that was not out of the. That was kind of what they were straight up about it with us, that we could die at that point. We put it was, I believe it was mercury. They called it quicksilver that we put inside the machine. That we hooked up little chrome hoses to it, and it refilled it. I guess there was a leak, and then somebody went down and fixed it, and we went in and put new fluid in it. Then we stood at attention, and we waited there not long, and you could hear it talking to us, and I couldn't see it, but it was talking to us, and it was like abusive. It was like a telepathic contact in an abusive way, and it talked to us like we were. I don't know how to say it, man. It talked to us like we were. Like it taunted us. It was taunting us, And it said, "Who's it going to be today? I bet you think you're done, or I bet you think you're finished. But who's it going to be today?" And then when I saw it, it was invisible. Think of the Predator, but not like that. The invisibility that it was using was a gas. It had a suit on that was getting gas off, and the gas you could see through around to make it invisible. And all except for its eye. It had an eye, a big yellow eye, and it came down and got close to us and looked at us. Who's it going to be? And he came right to me. Is it you? Not you. And then he went to the next one. And when he got to the guy at the end of the line, he started like yelling at him, but not. It was telepathic. But he was yelling at him like, "It's you. I think it's you. I think it's you today. I think it's your turn to go." And then he said nothing. And then he didn't kill anybody. And he said, "You guys are all too pathetic," or something like that. I don't know word for word exactly what he said, but I remember he said that we smelled terrible. And he said, "I'll bet you think that I smell bad when you're the ones that smell terrible." And then all four of us at the exact time in unison pissed ourselves. He made us. We all peed ourselves. All four of us. We stood there in attention, and it made us piss. And he said, there, that's better. And he laughed, and the eye all of a sudden went way up high, like, like 15 feet up. It looked like he was flying. But I think it may have been how tall he was. I don't know. But I couldn't see him. You couldn't see anything but his eye. And a gas shooting off that was clear, that you could see through it. Like that was the invisibility, was a gas, like a constant, like a steam coming off of it.
Can I ask you some questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to go back and just go back through each part of that before we move on, just to get some clarity. So you portaled in Chicago, building another building against it. You then used the packs with the anti-gravity belt. You scaled this really tall building, got to the top of that building, and you waited. Right.
Well, we fixed an air conditioning. We refilled mercury
into the air conditioning unit,
which wasn't an air conditioning unit. It was an anti-grav unit for the apartment below. That's what we were aware of that, and we filled that up. It took 15 minutes, and then we stood at attention.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when you started to get the telepathic messages from this being that then eventually came out to where you were standing attention, right? So let's just go into a little bit more of a graphical explanation before we go any further past it going really tall. Just a bit more from you about what you saw. You said it was invisible, but you said you could see one eye. So just try and explain that to me in a bit more detail. From what it was a big yellow eye, and it had a vertical slit. Okay.
And it
just one.
Just one eye. Right. Exactly. He showed it. So he said something like that. He said something like, "I don't want you to think that I'm just a ghost, so I'll let you see. I forget what he said. The word he used. He used the word. I'll let you see me, or my true self. I'll let you see part of me. I'll let you see the good part, or it's something like that. I'll let you see something of quality of me, or I forget the exact words. But it was his eye. And then, like I said, it came and it inspected it. It went down and inspected us. And I just remember it looked at me and then kept going. Like, it looked at me for a second and then moved on.
So do you think then, so you obviously know what Chicago City looks like, right? So the immediate reaction that you gave me was that we were in Chicago City.
Well, they told me Chicago.
They told you, right?
And then later on, so I've been to Chicago since in my regular life. I've been there a few times, and it was like Chicago in the summer. It looked like downtown in the high-rise areas of Chicago. And it was, I don't know what building it was, but it was a pretty tall building, and it had, like I said, it had a roof that we came out of the stairwell, and then we scaled up a vertical surface to another roof that had a bunch of air conditioning units on it.
Which we know are anti-grav units for the apartments below, which is what.
Well, the one that we worked on, yeah, that's what that was. Apparently, that thing, and since then, I like to think of them. They call them, their rooms. That they're an ET room for, and I'll bet there are some in every city, a place for them to go and conduct business. And but I think that they are from a lower gravity world, or prefer the ability to turn their gravity down, and that's what they would put in their apartment. So that kind of technology, and we wouldn't know it.
Sure. So then let's go on from. So then, what you remember was that you all sort of like, unfortunately, you all pissed your pants because you were so scared.
No, it wasn't because we were scared. He did something to us, and we all pissed our pants in unison. He said we didn't smell. He said we smelled terrible, and then he made us piss ourselves. And he said, "There, that's better." Okay. And he laughed, and he left. That's when he left. And then we stood there for a minute, like, can we go? We stood there.
Said that he got really tall. What happened? So
I think he bent down. I think he was a big being. I think that either he had his own form of anti-grav belt, like the ones we were wearing. I originally thought that that's what he was, and he could fly. But then now that I think about it, he was probably that tall, and when he was crouching down to look at us, and then when he was done looking at us, he stood back up to his normal height, which was way up there. And but I thought he was flying at first, But like I said, you couldn't see him. When you were close, you could see the gas. But after he stood back 20 feet, you couldn't see anything. It
Did you
was
still see the eye?
and it was at night.
Could you still see the eye when he stood there?
Yes, yeah, yep.
Okay. So you fixed it. So you go on.
Oh, go no. I was just saying it was nighttime. So once he stepped back, once the eye went up, and then he stepped back, he was still interacting with us, talking to us. But I stood straight. I was instructed to stand there and look straight forward and look nowhere else. So I did look around a little bit, but it was. I was thinking, here we go. I'm gonna die. And the moment he inspected me, I was kind of like expecting to be killed at that time. I don't want to be too macabre about this, but I thought, here's my exit. I'm going to get out. He's going to kill me,
Sure.
and I don't have to go back to this terrible life. It was like an escape opportunity for me. And I think that's what I think I was calm. Right? I think I was calm at that because of that. I had made peace with my death. The whole day I was thinking, here it is. I'm going to die today, and I had made peace with that. And I think that's why I was unappealing to him at that point, because I was calm. And so when he came by and checked me out, I was, he just breezed right by me. It was both disappointing and wonderful at the same time. I was happy to be alive, but I was in a way disappointed that I had to go. And then I remember the whole way back after that, I thought, I hope they give me a promotion. I hope I get something good out of this, and I don't have to work with those guys anymore. I didn't know that I got a new job, but ultimately I got nothing out of it.
Really?
When I went back to work, we sat there and we thought that after he left, we thought that he didn't dismiss us. And then one of us had some kind of communication thing. And he said, okay, line up, we're out of here. And we all just literally, we were facing forward, we all just turned, and a portal opened up there, and we walked into it, and we were back in that room, all of us. And they were laughing at us for peeing ourselves. And I didn't get a change of clothes until the end of the day. I had to wear those pants the rest of the day. I went back to work. They escorted me right back of the way we came, and I went right back into the ship. They put me right back into the section, and I went back to work that day.
Then you flew back, and then back into the. So, wow, that's the bit that's taken me back out of that story. And look, we've already briefly discussed Draconians, you and I, and I'm sure there's more for me and you to talk about the Draconians, and it really interests me. The thing that interests me the most about the thing that you've just explained to me is it's the portals to and from, and it's the fact that where they told you that you were going to, and where you arrived at when you went and climbed up those buildings, right? For us to talk about you coming from Ceres to the moon and then portal into Chicago to do a mission to fill up anti-grav tanks of Mercury in Chicago for a Draconian reptilian, that concept of a reality that I just don't think many people, Tony, really have fully grasped the fact that there are reptilians on this planet with us now.
Well, or whether it's secret or not, I don't know. But you know what? That's why it's really far out there, the whole story, and that's why I haven't spoke about it. Like climbing up, it didn't make sense to me why they wouldn't just portal us right to the spot to get the repairs, and then portal us out. Why the whole climbing thing happened. But now it does, because they were trying to stoke up adrenaline in us so that we'd be a snack for it.
Yeah. So essentially, what we're saying though, Tony, right, is this guy, this reptilian, potentially is an Earth reptilian, right? And potentially where you're going to do the job that you've done, is that a job that you're doing for him, right? Is it that he wanted his anti-grav tank filled with mercury, and you were called there, and the point of baiting you to climb up there, maybe he could have ate you, and maybe that's what their deal is with him, right? Is because what's interesting about what you said is that the Draconians have said to you, the Germans have said to you, don't let no one mess with you, right? At the beginning of this mission, you've had
on the base,
and on the base, right? But then, so like, if they're such high ranking and nobody can mess with them on the base, then what is this reptilian thing, and why is it that they're sending their people there to be expendable to fill up a mercury tank for this reptilian, right? And does that mean that they're doing this regularly, and the reptilians are feeding on everyone that's got a high adrenaline level. So they go do the job. Thanks very much for filling out my tank. As a little munch to you. You know, it's just I love the story. I love the fact the rendition that you've given me. I think is amazing, right? And thanks so much for sharing it with me. I know it's one of those ones that it's not been tapped.
It's hard to explain. That it's hard to say stuff that you know is going to be ridiculed. I know that it's going to be at some point someone's going to listen to it and go, "Oh, geez, come on," you know. I know it's going to be ridiculed, but I remember it. It's just one of those. This is what I remember I went through at that time, and this was years before any of the other series stuff. When I had a method of freedom, you know, we're talking 4 years in. It was another 3-4 years before I got to any kind of paycheck where I could go out around the town on Ceres and went on to a different ship and had a whole different career. This was one circumstance of one of the away missions, you know, that I did.
And I know that you've got more for us to talk about, right? So that's kind of where we started, and what you said you wanted to start to build on is maybe these things. And I've asked you to talk to me about things that maybe you've not spoke to other people about, and you know, I think it's great that. And just what I just want to say, like the thing about, for me, the Draconian thing, the reptilian thing, what we need to all do as a species is realise that there are other species that live on this earth. And there are other things that have been going on for a very long time on this earth. And this is only a point where you're starting to hear a rendition from you that gives a bit of clarity about that, right? This guy's here, this beast's here, man. And there are a lot of other species that are on this planet.
I've always said that when you think about policies that happen in corporations or governments that do policies that seem inhuman, then maybe they're being made. Maybe those decisions are not being made by humans. You look at a lot of things. You know, you think, why would they do that? There's a lot of things that happen all the time, like especially like corporate things, where you go, why are they cutting down the rainforest like the way they're doing? I mean, for instance, because they don't care, because they're not from here, because they're not people. You know what I mean? Like, people at the very top are being told what to do by an ET that they really can't do anything about.
That's right.
Sees us as a food supply.
And you know, this Tony, this goes all the way back, doesn't it? Right? This goes back to what you and me started to talk about, and this stuff is quite meaningful to me. Okay, this whole the point when the Germans started to interact with this race that basically shared information with them, that made them go and do this loop of the world to try and find things that you and me have been discussing. Right? This is the species. This is the reptilians, right? These are the Draconians that I think potentially live in Antarctica, in those areas in Antarctica where it's hotter underground. And there are maybe thousands of these beings under the ground there. And they've been here for a long time, and they do control us. But you see, doesn't this lead you then to start to think that's the reason that we don't get disclosure?
Yeah, that's exactly why. Because we think that we are the top of the food chain, or the intelligence chain, for that matter. We think we're the most smartest as it gets, and frankly, we're not. There are beings that are smarter than us or more advanced than us than we are of our pet dog that's in the house, and they see us as pets. They see us as commodity cow. You know, we're a cow to them. And you know, part of moving on, part of disclosing is going to be having to get a grasp of that. People are going to have to get a grasp that we're not the top of the food chain, or the evolution chain. That there are, and it's good, because we should aspire to be better. And a lot of people are not aspiring to be better people. You
don't when you think that you are the top of the food chain. You don't think you have anything to aspire to. And
people are aspiring to own better things. That's about it. They're not trying to be better. Yeah.
And this is the difference between, and this is kind of, I guess this is quite a nice way to round things up, right? And this is the thing about esoteric disclosure. Esoteric disclosure is about, it's not just about disclosure of ETs. It's not just about disclosure of spaceships. It's a whole spiritual journey that our culture, our society need to go through. And there's an interesting series of videos, Tony, that I've watched in the last 3 weeks, just after I started to speak to you, by a guy called Damon T. Berry. And I'll send you the stuff. It's amazing, right? And what it does is and it's got a nice little touch to the end, right? What it does is it goes into depicting the cave paintings, like every different cave painting across our Earth, yeah? And just a few things on that topic, right? Number one, what paint do we have on this Earth today that lasts 10 million years? We don't. And it's just amazing. The things that he's basically disclosed in his video is how can those paintings be just of a bull? And then look at those paintings and think of yourself as being not human and not the most intelligent species on this Earth, and think about those things relating to star constellations, right? And think about there being maybe 20 or 30,000 different human species races that have been on this Earth before us, that have all ascended already. Just and to put that type of thing into concepts is fascinating for me, you know. And yeah, I think this all links into the fact that we're definitely not alone, right? We're definitely not alone on this Earth.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people, you hear it all the time, like people say, I wish they would take me, or I wish I could meet an ET. You know, it's kind of like the grass is always greener on the other side. Just you got it good. You know,
yeah,
you might not enjoy everybody that you meet, that just because they're not from around here. It's I don't know how else to say it from that, but you know, somebody friended me not too long ago and started asking me questions. Said, "You're the luckiest guy ever. You got to meet ETs and things." And I'm thinking, it didn't feel lucky when I lived through what I did. When I went through the role that I had and what I went through, didn't feel lucky to me. You know, on one point, I'm happy that I did experience it and that I remember it, because I'm aware. Now I'm aware of a different, you know, of a different reality than what most people are aware of.
It begins,
and that's what we're talking about here.
Consciousness and awareness, right? And what you can do is you can share that awareness and share that consciousness and make other people aware and make other people more conscious of other realities that aren't just the reality they live in. Can you say that you're luckier than others? Look, I met a really high Mason, right? When I first started getting into this, and I've not told you what happened to me. We'll do that another day. But I met a really high Mason, and right at the beginning of me going into all of this, I managed to get him to explain some of the stuff about the level of in the Masons that he was at, and he was very scared and worried. But the thing he said to me was this, Tony: don't learn it, because if you learn it, you can't unlearn it, man. In ignorance, in some forms, is bliss, and once you start to go down this rabbit hole, there is no coming back. You don't come back, right?
Right.
You just don't. And yeah, I think that's been awesome, Tony. Thank you so much for this today.
Thanks. Good luck with this story. I hope that it's received well. Like I said, I've never spoke of it before, so we'll see what people have to say about it. I kind of expect some kind of criticism, but you know what? Like, it's what I remember. I'm not speaking it as it's the gospel or something, but it's an experience that I remember, the time up there that I went through.
And yeah, I thank you so much, and hopefully what we can do, Tony, is build from this now and start delving into other areas of this 4 or 5 years before we start going on to other ships and stuff, and starting to maybe hear some of these untold stories yet.
I'd love to. I'd love to keep going. There's more I'd like to talk about, definitely.
Okay, awesome. Tony, thank you so much, my man. Thank you so much. From everybody at Esoteric Disclosure, we look forward to seeing you next time. And yeah, thank you.